Did you know that European scholars once claimed Africa had no history? This is a lie that has been used to justify slavery and colonialism for centuries. Today, we are diving deep into the evidence that proves Africa was home to some of the world's most advanced and sophisticated civilizations, long before European contact. The myth that Africa had no history or civilization is rooted in 19th century Eurocentric thought. Figures like the philosopher Hegel argued that Africa was not a historical part of the world, essentially erasing its past. This idea served as a justification for colonial conquest, portraying Europeans as bringers of civilization to a dark continent. But the archaeological record tells a very different story. Let's start with the kingdom of Kush, flourishing from around 2500 BC to 350 CE in what is now Sudan. Centered in cities like Napata and Meroe, Kush was a contemporary of ancient Egypt and even ruled it for a time. In fact, Kushite King Pa invaded and ruled Egypt as pharaoh, establishing the 25th dynasty. But Kush was not just a political power, it was also an industrial one. Historians estimate that Meroe produced 170 million kilograms of iron over the centuries. This iron was exported to Rome and India, showcasing Kush's economic reach and technological prowess. The Kushites even developed their own writing system, Meroitic script, distinct from Egyptian hieroglyphs. Moving south, we find Great Zimbabwe, a magnificent stone-walled city built by the Shona people between 1100 and 1450 CE. At its peak, Great Zimbabwe covered over 7 square kilometers and housed as many as 18,000 people. This was a major trading hub, exporting an estimated 20 tons of gold annually to the Swahili coast, which connected to trade routes stretching across the Indian Ocean. Further west, in modern-day Nigeria, the Igbo civilization thrived in the 9th century CE. Here, archaeologists have unearthed stunning bronze artifacts, including a leopard bronze head, which dates back to 850 CE. These artifacts demonstrate a mastery of lost wax casting that was more advanced than anything found in Europe at the time. The Igbo were linked to the Nri kingdom, which existed from around 900 to 1911 CE, demonstrating a long history of political and cultural continuity in the region. Let's not forget the Mali Empire, founded by Sundiata Keita in 1235. This empire reached its zenith under Mansa Musa, whose legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 distributed so much gold that it crashed the Cairo markets. Timbuktu, a city within the Mali Empire, became a center of learning, housing as many as 25,000 students. And in East Africa, the kingdom of Aksum flourished from around 100 to 940 CE. King Izana converted to Christianity in the 4th century CE and minted over 1,500 gold coins. Aksum traded extensively with Rome, exporting ivory and elephants. The city of Kama, predating the kingdom of Kush in Sudan, also held considerable significance. Its Defufa temples, constructed around 2450 BC, are monumental mud brick structures rivaling contemporary constructions in Egypt. Elite burials with hundreds of cattle sacrifices reflect a society with substantial economic surplus and sophisticated urban planning. Meroe's industrial capacity was astounding. Over 300 blast furnaces by 200 BC churned out tools and weapons, fueling an army that even defeated the Romans at Aswan in 23 BC. The Benin bronzes, created between 1280 and 1897 CE, represent another remarkable artistic achievement. These plaques, adorning the Oba's Palace in Nigeria, depicted military campaigns and court life. European traders like Alfred Dapa marveled at Benin, comparing it to Amsterdam. Along the Swahili coast, city-states like Kilwa controlled the gold and ivory trade. The Sultan Al-Hassan ibn Suleiman oversaw a thriving economy. Chinese Admiral Zheng he visited in 1418, impressed by the city's multi-story coral stone palaces. The Yoruba Ife heads, dating back to around 1200 CE, are terracotta and bronze sculptures that display a level of realism unmatched in Europe at the time. So, where did this myth of a historyless Africa come from? It arose in the 15th to 19th centuries, fueled by the transatlantic slave trade. Thinkers like David Hume claimed there were no ingenious arts in Africa. This rhetoric was used to justify the enslavement and exploitation of African people. Colonial powers further perpetuated the myth to legitimize their rule, portraying themselves as bringing civilization to a primitive continent. The impact of this myth has been devastating. It dehumanized Africans, making it easier to justify the horrors of the slave trade, in which an estimated 12.5 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic. Even after the end of slavery, the myth continued to fuel racism and discrimination. But Africans themselves fought back against this narrative. After World War II, the colonization movement swept across the continent. As newly independent nations emerged, African archaeologists began to uncover the evidence of their rich and complex past. Today, Great Zimbabwe is a source of national pride for Zimbabwe, appearing on the country's flag. The Meroe Pyramids in Sudan are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. An effort are underway to repatriate the Benin bronzes, looted by the British in 1897, to their rightful home in Nigeria. The legacy of this myth continues to affect Africa today. Only a small percentage of world history textbooks cover sub-Saharan Africa before 1500. But there are also controversies surrounding the interpretation of African history. Some Afrocentric claims, such as the assertion that Egypt was exclusively black, have been criticized for oversimplifying the complex ethnic history of the region. Others argue that focusing solely on pre-colonial Africa ignores the long history of interaction between Africa and the rest of the world. The key takeaway is that Africa has a long and rich history, full of innovation, creativity, and achievement. It's a history that deserves to be told, and it's a history that challenges the racist myths that have been used to justify oppression for far too long. By understanding Africa's true past, we can build a more just and equitable future for all. The evidence is clear: Africa has always had history, and it's time the world knew it.